Good afternoon and welcome to our 15th Democracy Talk, the series of conversations on the topic of democracy and democratic competencies education, organized in the framework of the Democrat Horizon Europe project. My name is Francesca Uras. I work as project manager for UCAN, which is one of the partners of this project. And today we have the pleasure to have with us the University of Helsinki, another one of the partners of the project. So I'm really happy to welcome Anne Nevgi, Associate Professor at the Department of Education of the University of Helsinki. We were expecting also Niklas Sandström to join us. He's unfortunately not very well today, but he may join us later. So we will be happy to have it with us if he can join us. The topic of today's conversation is transformation and reflection in education for democracy. Now, just a quick note, after the presentation, we will have time for questions. So if you have any questions here in Zoom, you can post them in the chat, or you will be able to open your camera and microphone and ask your question directly. If you're following us from YouTube, you can comment with your question and we will take your question as well. So I will now give the floor to our presenter. Dear Anne, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So, our topic is transformation and reflection in education for democracy. We have prepared together this with Dr. Niklas Sandström, and we are from Faculty of Educational Sciences. I am already retired, but I do still actively research work. And I'm very happy that you have invited me to participate for this. So when I was thinking about this topic, and then I was thinking, reflecting myself, what I see that why in nowadays democracy may be under threat in democracies. We know that there are dictatorships and there are totalitarian regimes in the world, countries which are ruled by dictators. But then we know that we have these democratic countries which are ruled by the people who live in those countries by citizens, and citizens are voting to have their who are representing people in their government. But then when we think about, then we notice that their voting is not exactly the same as actively participating in society's decision-making process. We see that I have seen that there is a growing dissatisfaction concerning about these different election processes and how the members of parliament or how the government are elected in different countries. And it is maybe one reason is to high polarizations, which I can see, for example, in United States, that they were electing their president, and it was very polarized in that sense. And when I think about my country, Finland, we have very polarized that we have a far right, people are blamed to be far right, or people are blamed to be far left. And then we think about this is that when you are voting, people are sometimes not dissatisfied about why my vote doesn't have any impact on it's the same policy is continuing. Then there is also, when we think about, when reflecting this, I was thinking about critical thinking. And critical thinking is sometimes misunderstood that you are criticizing other people about what kind of persons they are. But somehow it is not the same as you are blaming and naming your opponents who have different opinions than you have. And then you go, it's ad hominem blaming of people instead of arguing and instead of going with their arguments and discussing about facts. It is more, and this is also one reason why we have this more polarized politics in Western countries especially. And then when we think about education for democracy, it is not the same as only learning about society, how society functions, or how politics are, how the rulers are elected in the country, or who are the main decision makers. So that is also not the same, and we continue in this idea of why it is not the same. But then there was also, when I was thinking that these threats for democracy, I was thinking about this current, what has happened lately in our democratic countries. And I can see that free speech is under threat in democracies. For example, I follow quite keenly policies in the UK. That is because reason I have many relatives and friends living in the UK. So that's the one reason why I follow. And there was something that happened in August, and there were unfortunate terrorist attack where a young man under 18, 17-year-old killed 3 girls and 3 little girls and wounded other girls, children, and also teachers. And then what happened after that situation, there was demonstrations going on in the UK, and then people were sending messages to social media, but the government in UK, that Labour government, decided to somehow to take control on this, what was happening in the country, and they started very strict policy against people who were just discussing and demonstrating or presenting their opinion in social media. And these people were arrested and sentenced even to 2 or 4 years in prison for posts they made in social media. And then just recently there was also another happening in Oxford Union. Oxford Union is a student union, and it was especially in a situation, and because they arranged, they favored that there is a free speech, and that kind of people are invited to give on the current topics their opinions, speech, and there is invited to give some 20-minute speech, and then after that there will be discussion. And now the topic of that was about current crisis in Gaza and Israel, and that what is happening there. And then there were some speakers who were speaking for Israel and the situation, giving their opinions and their facts, because seeing the things from their perspective. And the students behaved very badly and rudely, and they shouted and they wanted to stop that person to speak freely. And then finally, even they couldn't speak freely because the students were so agonized against those different opinions than their own. So that were contrary to their own opinions. So they wanted to stop, and they didn't give the space for free speech to people who were presenting different opinions. And then something happened in our Independence Days, 6th of this December. In our main library in Helsinki city, we have an Oodi library, and it's quite a popular place where people come and gather together. And then a far-right organization organized a reading circle in an Oodi library, just to read a book and discuss about a book, and that was organized. But it aroused far leftists to come to library to demonstrate with shouting and loud voices, so that eventually they stopped the possibility of participating in the reading cycle, and the reading circle was stopped. And this far-right organization went away. And what I could see from the people who were, for example, in X posts, people were praising, if they were having their left, they were more leftist, their ideas, and they were praising those far leftist people. And then, of course, those people who are more righteous politics and opinions, and they were then complaining. But then I was thinking that what about if this had been a different opposite way? If far leftists would have arranged, organized reading circle, and far right people would have come to shout there, and that would have been then again different opinions would have been presented. So these are some which I see as some threats and something what we have, what is going on in our current societies in Western democracies. So how can education be transformed to promote active citizenship in democracies? And so we have titled this Transformation and Reflection in Education for Democracy. And I continue with this idea. What we have is about critical reflection. And when we think about critical reflection, then we need to think about that people, you cannot be critical if you are not aware about your own thoughts, your own attitudes, your own emotions, if you cannot recognize what you are feeling, how you are behaving. So you can read here that even though it is about education for democracy and civic education is traditionally aimed to preserve existing norms while facilitating new ideas. Contemporary democratic challenges underscore the need for change and lifelong learning. This is where transformative learning intersects with education for democracy, offering a pathway for individuals to become critically engaged citizens capable of fostering democratic agency. And this is from the draft under review, which is written by Maija Hytti and Niklas Sandström. And you can see the same idea also from S.M. Parker and Fleming 2020 and Hogan Glaubert et al. 2023. So when we think about critical reflection, then we should distinguish some meaning perspectives. There is a meaning perspective means that it is an interpretation of the meaning of a present event, whatever it is, that is based on a frame of reference or expectation from prior experiences. And we have three different perspectives. One is epistemic, what kind of knowledge we have about that, what is our knowledge base about the situation or the event, how we understand it, what is our understanding about the facts and realities. So it's epistemic and it's about knowledge. Or then we have perspective, meaning perspective is sociolinguistic meaning perspective. That means that it's based on what kind of social norms and cultural expectations we have, how we are socialized and become as members of the society, and our language and how we deal with our language and how we what is our culture and what are our attitudes, cultural attitudes, what we think about. And then it is psychological meaning perspective that is a more personal perspective because it is related to our self-concept, what kind of person I am as a person, what I need, what anxieties and emotions I have, and what are my personality-based preferences. So when you think about this, then we go through thinking about a transformation in reflection and critical thinking and education for democracy. So transformation through reflection is possible if we are able to develop our capacity for metacognition, thinking about our own thinking, how I think and why I think in this way. What are my prejudices? How can I find out what kind of prejudices I have? And how I can link my personal experiences to broader social and cultural contexts. How my experience, for example, what I was explaining to you about concerning, for example, what happened in a library of Oodi, how it is how I relate that to some broader social and cultural context of Finland. And then is transformation through critical thinking. Here emphasis is on our reasoning, how we evaluate evidence, and how are we able to identify our biases, that we may have some biased assumptions about the things, how they are happening, and how we encourage intellectual openness and willingness to revise our views, and how we are open also to discuss with other people concerning about their views of and their perspectives of life, and not focusing only our own views, but how we can be as open also to discuss openly, and maybe we can argue with other people, but we must also listen what they are saying, actively listening them. And that is then comes by transformation in educational for democracy, is that we need to promote dialogue. We need to promote debate. But at the same time, we should have mutual respect as a core democratic practice in ourselves. So we need to respect another person and give, for example, 20 minutes time to speak and give a freely present opinion, what is his or her perspective on some issue. And then we can start continuing discussing and debating. But we need to have also be quiet sometimes when the person is speaking and not to shout, that I could see from that Oxford Union situation, for example. People were trying to shut down people who are giving different opinions. And we need to encourage participatory learning environments where diverse viewpoints are valued. So, and that is possible, for example, that in schools we give from the very start, or also we can think about even from the kindergarten phase, that the children and pupils, students, teenagers, they always have a chance to say what is their viewpoint and what they think about, for example, how to arrange a classroom, how they can participate in a decision making, slowly progressing and getting more responsibilities in decision making. So intersection of these dimensions. So only empowered individuals are capable of navigating complexity and contributing to just society. So, and to bring up empowered individuals means that from childhood, you give children, and in the school, you give children and pupils chance to say and actively participate in some decision-making concerning, for example, about school environment or something small, or how to organize some trips or so on. And this is the same that cultivation of lifelong learners who are both self-critical and socially intelligent, engaged. And when think about people who are self-critical, we must think about people who are self-aware about their own emotions, self-aware about their own thinking. They have a metacognitive skills. They can evaluate and assess their own thinking. They can evaluate their own prejudices. They can become aware of their biases. And then they can become also socially engaged because they feel that they are also valued, and they can become active citizens engaging in decision making in the society. And this is also possible if we develop inclusive participatory frameworks that advance democratic values. And the participatory framework means that we allow students to start from the very early on to participate in decision making in schools and in society. So, and finally, I will end just asking your thoughts, because I said something what I had in my mind about which I saw as the biggest threats or obstacles for democracy. But what do you consider is the biggest obstacle to education for democracy? Thank you for listening. I stop my sharing.
Thank you very much, Anne, for this presentation. I think it raises a lot of interesting thoughts and questions. Well, I try to give a first contribution to your question. I think it's one obstacle to education for democracy is that, I mean, you cannot limit education for democracy to schools. We need democratic processes and democratic behaviors all over in societies, in all institutions, in all contexts, starting from families. And this is how we can hope democratic competence to be really acquired and in a coherent way. So well, that's my immediate thought to your question. Before giving the floor to participants for their questions, I start with one question of mine, because I think there is a recurring question that comes out, and not only in democracy talks, but everywhere and every day. And it's about how we can balance in democratic societies freedom of speech with prevention of hate speech, because sometimes I think we all agree that most of us don't like hate speech to be promoted or to be given space, but sometimes we observe that intolerant positions and intolerant behaviors are contested with intolerant methods. So we complain against intolerance, but sometimes we observe opponents to intolerance using intolerant behaviors. And I think this is a tricky issue, and I was wondering whether you have a thought on that, because this is something that I think has been raised quite often during our conversations.
Yes, I agree. It is very tricky question. It is a very tricky problem what we have because when we think we want to have free speech, and that means that people can present even what we may call as a hate speech. But otherwise it can be very simple one, like a blaming and naming other people, but it can be somehow also focusing on some other issues, and it can be focusing on some groups and like that. But if we try to stop that free speech, then we are slowly going towards the totalitarian. And finally, we're ending in a totalitarianism where there is no free speech. So that is really difficult how to, because I'm very much for free speech and very much for that people should be then corrected and argued against, and people should say. But then we have but this is mainly the problem is caused by social media, because social media, it's quite new. Anyway, it has been existing social media about 15, 20 years, maybe, or less, something, maybe 2010 progressing more. And when we have these Twitter, when there came Facebook, Twitter, and different kind of people could express freely what they were thinking. But then we have those trolls. We have also systematically some people producing hate speech. So then we have this problem again. How we, as a single active citizen, when I find myself in a situation that when I'm posting something on X, and then there come some trolls which are trying to take away, or then they are trying to silence me, and I have all right to say something. But this is something. It is a lot of discussion, and I have no solution for that. But I recognize this problem, that how we can have this, that we still give space for free speech, and we defend the right for free speech, and still try to understand that sometimes there should be some regulation and limits.
Thank you very much, Anne. I see here three raised hands. I think the first one was Georgios. Georgios, please.
Yes, thank you, Francesca, and many thanks to our speaker. I agree with the question before, and of course your questioning how to do this, what are the limits of free speech, but for me, even something more basic is what are the basic principles on which all this democratic edifice is constructed, and who is the guardian of those principles? Because we see that at some point, democracy becomes an ideology. You're either with us or against us, even in the democratic countries, as you noted in a way, using different words. But if the basics is that we all share, we respect the other human being, we respect their opinions, we try to persuade them through dialogue and critical thinking in a positive way for all of us, then we can find common ground. If we want to shut them up, whatever, and try to scare them or bully them in one way or another, then we have lost, I think, the whole concept of democracy. So do you really see this trend of democracy becoming more like an ideology and let's say zero-sum game, instead of going to the basics of how can our society work better by respecting each other, etc.? And that would explain also the extremes, I think, in behaviors from one and the other side. And is academia or is education independent enough to come in and say, we establish the common ground, we give the right education, and we enable people to interact positively or productively? Are you in a position, or you feel free enough, competent enough, whatever, to do that? Thanks.
Very difficult, thank you. Very difficult. So, because as an educator myself, I put a lot of hope in our educational systems. I put a lot of hope in that how we educate young people for democracy. And that's why I was mentioning that it is important to educate and support them to develop in critical thinking so that they can themselves compare different arguments, and then they can themselves become active citizens so that they can learn that they have a right to have their say in a society. So that's the only way that we can have that our democracy to continue to the future generations. This is my only answer is mainly, I always find out this is that we should always focus on the young people and help them and support them.
Thank you, Anne. This is a very hopeful perspective. Thank you. I think Carmen has a question.
Yes, well, it's almost a comment more than a question, because Anne, thanks for the presentation, because it was really very interesting, and it pointed out some very recent examples of situations that portray perfectly what is happening in any occasions. And I was wondering about your first answer to Francesca in the first question, and about this free speech that we all value. And I was just thinking that really the big problem for me is not that that we need, of course, we need to give option to everybody to express what they feel, even if we don't like what they say. But there is a problem with respect, and that is something that it happens with people like trolls and things like that. They actually act in a way that we should not allow that to happen. That is my point of view. Yeah. If you are actually contributing with your point of view, it's completely against mine. But if you are respectful, it's fine. But when you lack the respect and you disqualify people and things, then is when we need to put a stop. I think that is an important limit that we should all agree, no? Because at the end of the day, tolerance from democratic people is very weak in front of the intolerance of the non-democratic people. And that is the problem that we need to make sure that we control. I don't know if it's the word control, but that we watch at least.
Yes. That's interesting because to be tolerant and be for that we can say and give ideas for free speech, but then it is that how can we be tolerant to intolerant people? So whether there is some limits that where we should say that this will not go on, because then it is some for as a humanity. We have developed for long thousands years, and we have in every society we have some manners. We have some ways how we, for example, show our respect to other people, how we behave, and how we know our position. So these are also important ones. So that we should have a somehow understanding that we have some regulations, some rules. For example, when we have these kind of situations where we have a discussion of politics, discussion of issues which are highly hot topics, which are dividing people which people have very different, diverse perspectives, because these diverse perspectives may come from because they have a different social background, they have a different cultural background, they have a different religious background, they have maybe understand a different language. So there are many reasons why we have a very different perspectives to situations, and we have different opinions how to divide. And then maybe it's just we need to, in democracies, to develop these rules and regulations, how we can participate actively and how we can provide that every person has also right to have their say freely. But then in the same time, we need to have somehow take care that we don't allow trolls like in a social media, or we don't allow that when there is some public occasion happening on where people are going to give their speech, and then the audience is not allowed to shout and stop that, because that's a rule that you are allowed to have this 20 minutes, 10 minutes time, and then it's the same as you would have started shouting there or not listening me. So then I couldn't have give to you my message or what I'm thinking about. And if you are now asking me questions and then I will just shut down my screen and will not listen, it is not polite. It's impolite. So I think this is, but how to educate, then we go back to education, and then it is about education again. And so, and we know that in schools, we have a very good examples in schools when they can have a very good, how to help students to become more active and participate in a school in different ways. So that they can have something to, and that's the way that we can promote that their thinking and critical thinking, and also they empower pupils and students to become these active citizens when they become adults, and they know that they can participate, they can have their say and like that. But it is also that at the same time we may try to change our society towards more democratic.
Thank you, Anne. I read the chat. There's a comment by Niklas saying social media amplify many dimensions and perspectives in ways that can become overwhelming. Yes, exactly. And Georgios asked, is the situation worse on social media because there are no established rules of behavior there, at least not yet? I would say definitely so. I don't know if you want to comment on this, Anne.
Oh, yes, it's social media is different, especially it is recent phenomenon in a perspective of human history. It has been very recent that we have been, actually it is very recent that the people have their say. And this we can see also with this mass media. Mass media is somehow now feeling that they want to shut down. They don't like to have the people having their say, because they are used to have journalists and like them, they used to have power in their hands because they could control what was discussed in the society. And now we have a social media, which is somehow letting other people who have never been heard to say, but also participate, also in a very stupid comments and very idiotic ways, but that doesn't matter. But they have there is now somehow, and we cannot close this social media. That will continue, but we need to think about how to regulate it.
Thank you, Anne. I'm sorry, Karsten had a question or a comment, but he had to leave. So it's in the chat. I will read it out. I addressed the question by chat. The analysis of communication in social media indicates that emotional information is more shared than rational-based information. If this is the case, the critical thinking has its limits. If this does not include to manage well the own emotions, particularly in communication processes, well, yes. That's a good
Karsten,
point.
sorry that he had to leave. So I would have liked to discuss with him about this, because this is especially what I can see, because it is very emotional what is happening in social media. People are somehow driven with their emotions. They act immediately. They see something in social media and then they post immediately without thinking. And it was when I can remember those 30 years ago when the email came. And then we had this, that sometimes you were too quick to send the email that went to for whole group or whole department. And that was private email, actually. And then you were, oh, I didn't mean that. And you may use some rude words even. So even in those 30 years ago, we must learn that think first before you post anything. And this is the same with social media, because some people are very immediately becoming very angry, very aroused, and then they immediately type, and then they post that they're without thinking what they are saying. And that may become viral. And people, it may get 10,000 likes or something like that. And it goes globally, or everywhere. And suddenly you are people are knowing who you are, you have no more privacy. And people don't realize these are quite dangerous in that sense that the social media has. And then when we think about this future, our young generation, how to help them to become enough wise in their thinking, in their critical thinking, and how to help them and support them to how to act in social media. Because we know that for young people, there are TikToks and all, and this social media is very important for them. They have grown up with this social media. They are growing up with these mobiles in their hands. I can see it. So this is that they are all the time in somewhere and this is something, because now we come that how to support becoming controlling your emotions. It's only possible. It's not possible through online situations. It's possible in face-to-face situations. We need to come back towards give more emphasis on face-to-face meetings and face-to-face discussions, because though we have tried to develop different ways of how to express our emotions, but when we express our emotions in face-to-face situations, we can read another person's emotions immediately. But in online, we cannot. And when we are posting in social media, we are not seeing the person as a person. We are just alone there. We are posting very angry or something, what we are posting there. But then it is, I have sometimes said, it was long ago, but I said to some who posted some, what I had posted on Twitter, Those days it was Twitter, and then she was very much against what I had said, and then she said very rude things to me. Then I said that when we could meet at face to face, you wouldn't have never said that way to me. And then she of course said that she would have said, but then she became quiet because she realized, I understand, she realized she would have never said that to me. And that was because she was my academic colleague. We didn't know very well, but far away. So by the name, we knew each other. That's why I was, this was so, and then I was thinking that just knowing me by my name and I knowing her by her name, different university, and then sending something saying very rude again to me, and she would have never said in that way. She would have maybe argued against my opinions, but said it more polite way. And then it would have not felt for me so hurting.
Thank you, Anne. There's a comment here by Georgios in the chat. Can we create higher consciousness of the repercussions of social media posts and humanize those interactions too? It is people who are involved there too, except for the increasing use of AI, of course. Yes, absolutely.
Yes.
Yeah.
This is that, I must say that social media is also that you learn when you are there. And and how you act, and then it is that kind that social media is for you, and for other people it is. But I think that we need to learn about this as to humanize these interactions. We need to learn about to think that, and especially young people, that there is a person in. When you are sending something in a social media, posting something there, and then you are posting something about to other people and who are reading your post and who they come to figure out what kind of person you are, the way, what kind of post you send to social media. So this is very important one for, I think this is democracy for education also. If you want to be active citizen in how you can actively influence in a society, is also that you need to learn how to actively get engaged in social media and how yourself to control your behavior in social media. So then you are always an example to others. As an older person, I'm saying that because as an older person, you think always that you are always you must be an example.
I think we could all benefit from some emotional intelligence training, especially when approaching social media and digital tools.
Yes. Yeah, I recommend Daniel Goleman's Social Intelligence. It's very good reading.
It is. I'm not sure whether there are any other questions from the audience. Otherwise, I wanted to ask you, Anne, about what about the preparation of teachers? Because, I mean, no one can teach knowledge and skills that, in principle, she or he has not learned herself or himself. So I was wondering, teachers, to teach the education for democracy, they need to be well prepared. So my question is, are there specific provisions in place at your own institution or in the Finnish educational system in general to support the preparation of teachers and any professional development program for teachers in primary and secondary schools, for example?
I'm sorry, I don't have so much, so I don't know whether there is going on, and maybe Niklas knows more better about this, but then, but what I think, from my perspective, what I think is important in teacher education is there is that we have this, which are very important, that we have these programs which are supporting that teachers are teaching in pairs, or teachers are as a group teachers teaching, so that there is not only one teacher in a classroom, but there are 2 teachers or 3 teachers in a classroom. And there are many benefits, because then children can see also how the teachers themselves are collaborating and being there together. And Niklas is sending there something also, but then it is also this social emotional learning approaches. I read what Niklas said here is social and emotional learning approaches are being applied in at least some teacher education programs in Finland, and they are practiced systematically. So we have this. And what I think about myself was thinking about this emotional intelligence, and it is very important in teacher educations. Also help the becoming teachers to become aware of their emotions in teaching, and how they influence students. And of course, also that they to learn to use different kind of participatory methods in teaching. So that in that sense, that way to support pupils and students to become active citizens and to have their say.
Thank you very much, Anne, and also thanks Niklas for contributing in the chat. Yes, so any other question from participants here? Okay. So I think it's been a very inspiring conversation, Anne. Thank you very much, and also thanks for Niklas for joining us and contributing actively through the chat. We hope you recover well soon. Carmen has raised hand. No, okay. So maybe
Yes.
it is left from okay.
Yes. Thank you.
So yes, before closing our session, I would like to invite you to the next democracy talk, because this is the last talk for this year, 2024, but the talks will go on in 2025. And the next one will be on the 15th of January, the usual time, 3 p.m. Central European Time. We will have the pleasure to listen to Sonia Bussu of the University of Birmingham, who will be presenting the Inspire project, which is about co-designing more inclusive and embedded participation. It sounds already very interesting. So once again, I would like to thank you, Anne and Niklas, very much for being with us today. I would like to thank all participants for joining here in Zoom and on YouTube. And we really hope to have you with us next year in the next Democracy Talks.
Yes. Thank you. And thank you, Niklas. You were together with me, but preparing this, but not, so I was alone now speaking, but
thank you for taking the lead in this one. I'm quite, as you can hear, quite low in energy now.
Yes. Hope
Thank you,
get
Niklas.
better soon.
Get well to enjoy the holidays.
Yes. And whiskey helps, Carmen, I agree.
Yes. Okay.
Okay. Thank you.
Okay, take care, everyone, and see you in the next Democracy Talk.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.